the part of the Surrey Hills National Landscape team. So the National Landscape is the protected area in Surrey. So it's the area of outstanding natural beauty. So we protect it in terms of nature, species and habitat, but also for people and enjoyment of the countryside. So may that be from supporting local businesses, conserving the natural landscape, but also what you'll see here today through the arts as well. So my name's Emma and I'm the communications lead for the Surrey Hills. So I'll just hand over to Ali now to introduce herself.
Hi there, so I'm Ali and I manage a programme of arts across the Surrey Hills, and that can be sculpture, sound, creative writing or performance, so across the art forms.
And Krista?
Hello everyone, I'm Krista. I work for Surrey Hills Society, which is the charitable arm of the Surrey Hills National Landscape, working with volunteers and doing conservation projects. And then I'll hand over to Ash.
Hi, I'm Ash. I am an intern with Surrey Wildlife Trust, but I'm also interning with Surrey Hills and helping them out.
Thank you very much, everyone. So I will start sharing my screen and hopefully you'll be able to see it too. Can Ali or Krista give me a wave if that's worked? Brilliant. So I'll hit play and basically we'll just be walking you through a video at Farnham Heath, which is a heathland near Frensham Pond, so it's in the Farnham area. And Ash, Krista and Ali will be giving you lots of brilliant nuggets of information as we go along. So I'll hit play now.
So Heathland Artworks is a project that happens at Farnham Heath every year, and this is actually the 6th year it's been happening. So this is as you're entering the Heath. It's actually next to the Rural Life Living Museum as well, so it's nice for a visit that you can see both. And we're coming up to the first artwork, and that is called Heathland Dryads by Lottie Andrews. So we work with the students from the University for Creative Arts, which is really nearby. So they all come and have a site visit and then they respond with their artworks. So Lottie is a textiles artist and she's done these enamel centres of the Heathland Dryads surrounded by crochet. And the different crochets of the 4 pieces represent the different seasons on the Heath and the colours that you'll see on the Heath. So, for example, here you've got the purple of the heather and the yellow of the gorse. And it's nice because it changes over the seasons. When they have their site visit, it's winter and it's there's not a lot of colour. But then when they come back to when their works are installed, it's absolutely bursting with colour because of all the heather, as it's a heathland. So the students that participate are all different art forms. So textiles, ceramics, glass, fine art. And they're invited to respond in any way to the Heath, the history, the geology. So when you enter the Heath, there's this lovely wooded pathway. There's 12 artworks in all for Heathland Artworks.
Shall I talk a little bit about the heathland? So heathland is actually a man-made habitat and probably created about 5,000 years ago, so quite a long time ago. And the reason it's man-made is because if we just left it as it was and didn't sort of conserve or restore it, then it would eventually turn into secondary woodland and scrub. So there would be lots of trees. But the heathland habitat is characteristic with heather, which is that nice purple plant in the summer. It really needs managing using sort of livestock, and also removing those secondary trees. And that like creates really important habitat for species such as the Dartford warbler, which is a bird, and also the nightjar, which is a ground nesting bird, which they both really rely on the characteristic plant species that you find, so heather and also gorse, which we'll talk a little bit more about later on. But traditionally, the heathland was used for lots of different things. So gorse was used for food for livestock. You could also burn the soil for fuel. And also the heather itself was used for thatch in roofs. So it was really like there was a big connection between people and the land. But yeah, it is characteristic. It's got really sandy soils. So when it was originally created, lots of the trees were removed, and this led to really sort of nutrient poor soils. So they weren't very good for normal plants, and that's why plants such as heather and the ones that are really well adapted to heathland have done so well, and colonized those areas. So you can see sort of bracken as well. That's really characteristic of the heathland. So I think we're coming up to a laid hedgerow. So when we turn the corner, we'll be able to see it a bit better. Yeah, so just along the right-hand side here. So hedgerows are really important for wildlife. They provide food and shelter. So they provide foods all throughout the year, so berries and nuts and things, but also shelter because they're nice and dense and bushy for things like birds, dormice, hedgehogs. But laying, as you can see here, is a traditional sort of craft technique to sort of manage hedgerows and make sure that they're as healthy as possible. So if we just left hedgerows a bit like the heathland, they'd eventually grow into just a line of trees, which while this is good, you know, trees are good, we like to create a mosaic of habitats so that those species that are specially adapted to them can really benefit. So the way that hedge laying works is that the sort of shoots of the or main woody components of the hedge are slightly sort of sawed and bent over, and then they're sort of weaved in between, which you should be able to see shortly, between sort of stakes. And this encourages bushy growth at the base, which makes it give that traditional hedgerow shape rather than just a long line of gappy trees. So you can see there it's nice and bushy, and it will help it to stay healthy. And it's also nice to practice a sort of traditional craft as well. So I believe Ash has been doing some hedge laying recently. So I think we're going to come to some fungi in a minute. Oh, there's my foot. So yeah, so autumn is a brilliant time to see fungi. And this is the fly agaric. So it's sort of the traditional fairy tale like toadstool that you might sort of associate with myths and things. But it's actually one of up to 15,000 species of fungi, which can be found in the UK, which is quite incredible, really. So we tend to think of plants and animals, but fungi are their own separate kingdom, and they're really quite fascinating. So what we can see at the moment is actually the fruiting body. So fungi actually have a great underground network, but the bits that we see or might think of as mushrooms is the fruiting body, sorry. And that's actually how they reproduce. So they have things called spores, which is sort of how they reproduce in different areas. And these can travel by the wind or on animals, and they're released into the air, and then they find a new patch and reproduce. And I think we can see underneath, there's things called gills, and they sort of are quite fibrous, and that's where the spores are released from. Yeah, so you can just see the sort of gill-like structure underneath. But autumn is perfect time. You can see under this hedgerow, they sort of like the damp conditions with the leaf litter there. So if you are out and about at this time of year, oh, that's a good gill you can see there. If you are out and about at this time of year, then keep your eyes peeled for fungi because it's the perfect time. So I'll just let you enjoy some of the different fungi that we saw along the heath.
Are many of these poisonous?
Yeah, so the fly agaric is poisonous. I believe it used to actually be used for insecticide, which is, so don't touch them. But yeah, that is worth saying, is that fungi can be, some are edible, but also some are really poisonous. So it's definitely worth checking, or that you're with an expert before you go out picking or anything like that, because yeah, quite a few can be poisonous. I don't know if Emma's going to play the sound of Dartford warbler.
Yeah, should I? I wonder if I pause it here and then I can bring up the photo too, so we can see
sure.
it. So
Yeah,
when we were doing our tour, as you sort of walk through the countryside, some of the birds may be kind of like dispersing or flying off, or they may actually be nocturnal as well. So we couldn't capture many birds as we were walking, so we thought it might be nice just to listen and also see on YouTube a picture and a sound of the Dartford warbler. So I'll just bring that up now and hopefully you will be able to see and hear it. Bear with me one sec.
Save your clothes, turning dark.
Let's do that. I'll let it keep
The new
playing
color
while
catcher Max
I
Protect.
bring it up.
Ash, I don't know if you want to talk about the sand and snakes just while Emma gets the video up.
Yeah, I can do. So heathland is a really good habitat for our native reptiles. So we're lucky in Surrey that we have all 6 species of our native reptiles because we have such good heathland. Heathland's really good because it's got lots of open patches for snakes and lizards to be able to bask. This is how they get their heat. So they like basking in the open areas where there's no shade, and the sand retains a lot of heat. So it's quite nice for them to just sit. It's almost like sunbathing. Yeah.
Right. Let me just bring video. Hopefully you're seeing the YouTube video now. So let's give it a play. There we go.
Brilliant. So yeah, the Dartford warbler, it has that really characteristic red eye ring and sort of bluey plumage as well. So it's quite a beautiful bird. I'm very sad I haven't seen one myself yet, but fingers crossed.
I mean, they're really rare, aren't they? They were only about 16 pairs at one stage.
Yeah, that's right. So they've actually made quite a big comeback now, I think. But yeah, they were very rare at one stage. But things like the management of the heat. So I'm just about to talk about grazing actually. And so yeah, here we go. So things like livestock grazing, which helps to maintain that the heathland and the gorse and stop the trees from sort of growing, is really important for things like the Dartford warbler, so they have that habitat that they need. And they also, the Dartford warbler doesn't actually migrate, so it stays in the UK in the winter, so it can be quite cold. And it really relies on the gorse for sort of the heat protection and protection from the elements. So yeah, they are really iconic species, but we need to sort of help them. And at the Heath, I believe they have longhorn cattle. And what's really good about cattle is that they move across the Heath. So there's different stages of the Heath that are in different sort of stages of grazing or succession, I suppose. So again, that creates that mosaic of habitat. So it's good to have a variety, so it's not all just a blanket of one stage, if that makes sense. So yeah.
Sounds gone.
So this is the next artwork, and this is called Prayer for the Heathlands, and it's by a ceramic student. So the students are either BA, which is degree, or MA, masters. This was a BA ceramic student, and it was almost like pages from her sketchbook. She researched the different species that live on the Heath and did a ceramic relief of each of them, wrapping them around. So they're like the Tibetan prayer wheels that you get. However, with this, each one tells you a little bit about a different species. So it's nice that she's got the images and a little bit of text, just a simple bit, so that people just learn a little bit about them. And she's beautifully painted those with glazes. So she would have done that as flat piece of clay, and then wrapped it round and had them fired. So it's a nice interactive piece as well, that people of all ages can just turn those and feel sort of like they're part of it. And then we continue along the sandy path here amidst the heather to approach our next one. Like I say, there's 12 in all. This slightly varies year to year. And the artworks are in from, they put them in June, and they're there all the way until the end of October. So they're still in at the moment. So the students really have to think about, are they going to survive outside in all our different weathers and you know, there's cattle on site. So are they making something that's robust enough to last for 4 months? Krista.
I think Ash was just going to say a little bit about this butterfly and the wildfire risk as well.
So on the heathlands, we have a lot of different types of butterflies and some quite rare species of butterfly that is still the issue with the heathland is because can be so dry, and the droughts we've had this year, unfortunately, we've had a 78% increase in the UK on wildfires. Now, that's partly due to the weather being so much hotter, but it's also partly down to, unfortunately, people have been lighting barbecues and having fires on the different reserves. Now, unfortunately, this has caused a lot of issues. I know one of our affected reserves had over 500 hectares of damage affected to it, and that was just this year. So we like to try and tell people just to make sure not to have barbecues and fires, especially in the heat, because it causes a lot of displacement for a lot of wildlife and a lot of animals, such as the reptiles we were talking about earlier. And in the heathlands, we have some of the rarest species of reptiles, plants, and butterflies and insects. So we really don't want to be doing that.
So another artwork here, another ceramic piece. This is called Seeds of Life by Pat Small. And what she was doing was looking at seeds through a microscope and then blowing those up really large. So there's an alternative one coming up here. So she painstakingly made these. She built them by hand. They're in porcelain, which is, you'd think would be really fragile. But they, you know, these two have lasted. We did lose one. But so it's hand built, and it's mounted on these natural plinths, if you like. So the logs make really nice plinths. It's nice seeing work like this outside of the gallery space. So it's almost like you get that slightly gallery experience of looking up at something nice and close, but you're out in the beautiful landscape as well. So it's nice seeing porcelain outside. And also with galleries, some people feel like they're not welcome in them, whereas this is a space for everyone. You can get up close and touch these pieces.
So you can really see how sandy the heathland habitat is, and that's partly due to that nutrient poor sort of soil. So everything that lives here has to really withstand those dry, sandy conditions. And we've mentioned gorse a little bit already. So it's the sort of spiky, really spiky plant with yellow flowers. So you can just see it. Oh, that's quite a good diagram there. And it has lovely coconut smelling flowers. So if you do see any, then definitely give it a sniff. But also gorse is really clever because it actually flowers all year round. So unlike some plants that only flower in the spring and the summer, it does flower in the winter as well. And that means that if on a sunny day in the winter there happens to be any insects, there's really no competition from any other plants around. So it's quite a sneaky plant really, and it's very well adapted to have sort of pollination all year round.
So we're just approaching another artwork, and this one's actually was one of the first. So each year RSPB really usually love like one artwork particularly and want to keep hold of that. So this steel wing here by Will Pike has been in since 2017, and what he was doing was with each feather, if you like, that creating a texture that was inspired by one of the creatures on the heath. So it could be lizard or snake. So he's created this in steel, so hammering the different textures. And when he put it in, it just looked like metal. It was just the silver steel. And over time that's rusted, and I feel it sits so much better in the landscape now that the rust really does work well with the surrounding green. So that's become sort of a permanent piece now. And we're further up on the heath now, walking along the top ridge, and we're approaching a next piece, which is another textile piece. It's quite hard to put textile pieces in the landscape because even the slightest breeze really does kind of rip them around, but it's a good learning for the students to think, okay, how am I going to attach this to the trees? And some students really like the way they weather over the 4 months anyway. They're not precious about them. They want, that's all part of the piece. If threads come loose, that's all part of it. This piece is called Seeing Red, and it's by Geraldine Lewis. And she's, I don't know if you can see this very well. It's quite difficult on the film, this particular piece, but she's woven this over copper. So it's a thin sheet of copper with this sheer textile, red textile piece over the top of it, because she wanted to see how that weathers as well, because copper changes colour, so it was much more orangey to begin with. It was part of, this was her final year for her MA, so it was part of a whole range of those pieces. So it was nice that she could include an outdoor piece with her collection.
Can I ask what that was, what it was representing, or?
Yeah, that's a good question. So
didn't
she
get
called
that
it
one.
Seeing Red, and it was actually something that came to her during COVID. She was really concerned with particularly children and how that had affected them. So I guess seeing red is probably trying to represent their frustration, yeah, with that sort of living through the COVID period, really. So her whole collection was about that theme.
Mm.
Thank you.
And this piece is by Yun Shi. We have a lot of overseas students at the university. She is a fine art student, and she was representing, like, thinking about the rings within the tree and years and years, you know, over years it's built up. And so she's just created these tripods and these acrylic pieces attached to them, which are quite effective. The only thing is, so like I say, the students need to learn about how different it is to put work in an outdoor setting as opposed to a gallery. As you see, the second one here is broken. So that, you know, we do try and stress as they're working on them in the workshops and planning how they're going to install them, to really think about that. I mean, she had done it double layer to be thicker and really dug the legs in. So she, you know, she'd done quite well, but it's just that obviously perspex or acrylic is a brittle material. So that second one broke, unfortunately. And the piece...
sorry, Carol, you carry on. I'll ask in a minute.
No, we can pause it if it's about that one.
I was going to ask you how wheelchair accessible this is, because it looks a bit sandy just there.
Yeah, I'd say that you can do a section of it. So that initial section through the trees, and probably like that first that was slightly, it was firmer, that pathway. But maybe if Ash comments on that as a wheelchair user.
Yeah, so I didn't mention that, but I am actually a wheelchair user myself. And when it comes to sand, I suggest the thickest tires possible to get across them. But sand is not fun. So if you can stick to the paths without the sand, it looks quite all right, depending on like how you are to pushing on this kind of thing, or going along on this kind of thing.
What distance is it?
I'm not too sure.
Distance wise, Ali, do you know?
I don't actually, sorry, I don't know. It's a circular route. Like I say, wheelchair users could do the bit that you saw first, where we were looking at the mushrooms, but when we came to that T-junction, also if you go left, you catch the end of the route, so the artworks that I'll show you to come, you can catch those as well. But what I could do is send the link to the leaflet around, because then you can see that it's a circular route, and those nearest the entrance and the Rural Life Centre, these would be accessible here.
One
So I
of
was
the
just
things we
looking on
are
the...
doing is we're going around different routes and trying to put together some more information for people to be able to look at a route before they go and see how they feel they like. We're not telling you, yes, it's accessible, no, it's not accessible. We want you to be the judge by the information we're giving you of the routes, so that you can judge it yourself, because everyone has different abilities.
Okay, so I was
Yeah,
just
so-
looking at the map, the OS map. So you're to the right of the Rural Life Centre, sort of east of it, I suppose, behind it.
The parking is actually, you would go into the same entrance as the Rural Life Centre, but then you can actually drive up. So the Rural Life Centre is on your right, up the green area there, and park as close to the gate as you can. That's all fine for parking.
Okay.
by where you saw the banner, the RSPB banner when we first started.
Yeah, you are correct. It's to like the trail goes towards the east of the Rural Life Centre and behind it. But yeah, like we mentioned, there is a sort of gravel track which is a bit more compacted, and I think that would be more suitable. And also that initial with the sides would be great as well. But we are talking as well about creating a sort of an accessible trail there, hopefully. The discovery zone, or the disco zone, I think it's going to be called. So yeah, hopefully that will be another option as well.
Okay, thank you. Don't let me stop you carrying on.
No, please
that's
do ask
okay.
all
Yeah,
the
please.
questions you wish.
Yeah, and also, like I say, you could combine it with a visit to the Rural Life Living Museum, and there's a nice little cafe there as well. Right, so we're approaching another one now that RSPB really loved and kept hold of, and this is called Green Line by Irina Proligina, and it's about biodiversity loss. So the fading of the green glass into pure transparent. And again, you'd think putting glass out in the landscape, is that dangerous? But as you see, it's really thick glass that she's made here. It's very robust, and again is on a nice rustic wooden plinth. So again, a sort of gallery experience, but out here on the heath. You get a lovely view from up here. Krista, did you want to say something about that?
Yeah, sure. So on like just when the camera pans around to the left in a minute, yeah, that's it. You've got a gorgeous view out across the heath, and that also looks south towards sort of Hazelmere and Hindhead way, so towards the very south of the Surrey Hills. So that is a really nice open view. It gives you a sense of how open the heathland is, also with the sort of framing of the hills in the background.
And with that glass thing that you showed just a second ago, it doesn't, is it because it's in the trees, it won't cause a fire? Because do you know what I mean?
Yes, I do know what you mean. We do, and we say to the students this as well, make sure that you've checked it all for, for that. Because I think there's a different way, if the glass bends, that it's likely to possible for it to cause a fire. It's also mounted on perspex, so it's not sitting on dry foliage. So yes, so that is fine, and we get them checked out as well by RSPB as well, just to ensure that we're not causing any hazard to the heath. This is another glass piece here, so this is convex mirrors. This is called an eye made quiet, and the student here has created these convex mirrors so that you can look at the landscape in a different way, and they're darkly toned, so it's quite nice because you just, like I say, you can see the reflected landscape but completely like through a filter with a different color over it. I think they were quite hard for her to make, actually. Okay, and now we're approaching a ceramic piece. This student was really ambitious. So again, she's on her master's in ceramics, and she made 3 standing pieces made up of separate pieces. So they have to think about how they're going to transport them there, how they're going to install them. And she's actually dug massive holes for all 3 and put concrete block with a steel rod through the middle to create these towers. This is called Sentinels by Valerie McLean. And she was really struck on visiting the heath by the strong verticals in this kind of horizontal landscape, the strong verticals of the trees, wanted to emphasize that. But she's also, with this one, taken the colors from the heath. So that's all ceramic, that's all made by clay and fired in the kiln, and then in this case, slid over the steel bars. Although I think the cows might have liked scratching themselves on those ones.
Mm.
And this one here is very different. So this is by Betty Lau, and it's simply a collection of her mini paintings. She's got a very graphic style, and she took nature from both the heathlands, but also just elsewhere, like nationally. Just took some different species, different plants, and did some little graphic paintings of them. Like I said, so she's another overseas student, so it's quite nice because they're getting to know a different landscape that's completely unfamiliar. And then she had to think about, okay, so normally she's painting on a canvas on a frame. How would she exhibit those on the heath? And she's integrated them with the fencing there, just in a very simple way, which is quite sweet.
Presumably they're going to fade if you leave them out there.
Well, that's this is 4 months now. So
Okay.
yeah, if you left them out for like a couple of years, but they're going to be taking them down on the 31st of October.
So what did she use? Because they were really bright. They were like, I'm just to tell Luke and Jean, they were a robin and daffodils and other plants, but the colours of was it canvas that she painted it on?
On canvas,
Yeah.
yeah. I think
that
she
was
just
bright.
used sorry, I think she just used acrylic, but acrylic and you can coat it with like PVA, so it is sort of protected, but not for, it wouldn't be for like years, but for the duration of the exhibition have been absolutely fine.
Can people who can't see, can they come and touch anything?
Yeah, that's a really good point. Yes, you can touch all of the artworks really, but there's some that are more interesting to touch.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I'd say the ones that at the beginning, there were these ones that were like prayer wheels, and they're like pages from her sketchbook, but they're reliefs. Do you know what I mean? So like in the ceramics, there's indentations.
Yeah.
So you can feel those. Also with the other ceramic one, which was like blown up seeds under the microscope, so they were very tactile. You get all the sort of sticking out pieces. It'd be really interesting to feel that.
Oh. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
We've actually departed the Heathland Artworks route now, because as part of Surrey Hills Arts, we have a permanent programme called Inspiring Views. And we're just about to install our 9th permanent piece way over East Surrey near the Kent border. But the one here on the viewpoint at Farnham Heath is by Walter Bailey. And this, actually, the BBC filmed the making of this for Country File. So it's actually a shelter that is an artwork, and it's made up of lots of chestnut packed into the timber frame. So you could actually just take shelter if it was a bit rainy. But what's nice, as we approach it, it has these little frames in the side, which is quite nice, because then you're framing the views, you know, depending on what height you are and which angle you're looking. But then as we're approaching the inside here, this is very trademark Walter Bailey. It's his style, and he works with a chainsaw directly on the timber. He actually works in the woodland, and he does this sort of lattice work quite a lot with his artwork. So it's quite nice because you can look at the view through that. And what he does as well is he chars that. So with the wood, he'll actually, with a flame, make it black. So when he first put this back in 2019, that was really black, this bit here. And then over time, that greys with the weather. Walter Bailey's done a few pieces for us, and in fact our logo, if you've seen the Surrey Hills logo, that was inspired by Walter Bailey's lattice works artworks, and the logo is, our logo is a bit like a seed really, in that style. So that all came, was inspired by the sculptor Walter Bailey's work.
So do you cover the whole of the AONB?
That's right, yes. And it goes from, it's like a quarter of the county. It goes from edge to edge, the west and east, but obviously mid to south.
Yeah, because it runs across the front of my house, so we're not allowed to build anything. I live underneath Pitch Hill and Holmbury Hill.
Lovely. Yeah, we're very lucky. There's actually a boundary review going on at the moment, so it may be getting a bit bigger, hopefully.
I've just found out that my husband actually Michael's up there. Yeah, it's good because now I know. I feel like he's when he goes up there. He just told me.
Oh, that's great, Ange. So Gary goes cycling up here, and Ange hasn't seen it, so now she has. So that's really good.
Yeah, and I've also seen what he really goes in Milford. The Surrey Hills logo in Milford.
You've seen it, have you, Ange? The logo? Yeah. In Milford. Yeah.
Yeah, we've got one of our they're called boundary markers there, which has, as you say, it's got the logo on it. Yeah.
I go past it a lot.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
So
what's the logo supposed to be?
It's a seed pod. So essentially I'll pull up a picture of it at the end, so you can see it too. But it's meant to be almost representative of a seed being what's the word?
Infinity.
It begins. Say it again.
Was it the infinity seed?
Yes, but it's when the seed begins to grow. And it's kind of representative of the natural landscape is always changing and evolving. So it's sort of like an oak seed as it begins to grow into a tree. But it's also part of the infinity sign as well, to kind of be representative of nature. Will hopefully, with our hard work that we do, always be there for us and for people and for nature.
I like it.
Oh, thank you. It's good to hear.
So are you part of English Heritage or Surrey County
No,
Council?
we're not. But we don't actually own or manage any land. So we work purely in partnership. So I think Farnham Heath's a good example of that. So RSPB own and manage that land. But we work with them to help, you know, the public enjoyment of it through Heathland artworks, but also we're currently working on access projects with them to where can we help them and support them in creating a landscape that is for everyone and that we can all enjoy. So that's projects going on at the moment, but it happens across the landscape with the National Trust, with the County Council. So yeah, all in partnership.
The Hurtwood?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
We have some three permanent pieces in the Hurtwood.
Yes, I work with the National Trust at Box Hill. I've been volunteering there now for must be like 25 years, and I describe it as my therapeutic volunteering, because however I feel in the morning, if I get to the point I'm on the way there or get to the viewpoint, it lifts the spirits no end.
Definitely. Yeah, something about views, isn't there? But we work with National Trust a lot because they're the biggest land manager. And I don't know if you came to Harvest a few weeks ago.
Yes, I was there. I was one of the people who walked down the hill with the the torchlit procession,
Oh,
and
lovely.
then I was guiding a group of people back up to the top because they'd parked at the top. We came up the military road in the
Yes.
dark.
Oh, brilliant. Yeah. Oh, thank you for that.
Which is, you know, a nice even gradient, unlike coming up Burford Spur or something like that. It's, but it's a bit rough in places. You know, an ankle turner if you don't walk carefully just near the top, just below the fort. The thing which I've noticed about Surrey Hills recently is the opening of the Leith Hill Greenway, which has got a lovely sign which says wheelchair and horse and walker and bicycle, and you try and walk it from Denbies, and you get about less than a mile, and it's got a gradient sort of about like that, and then you get a bit further and you get into a bit which is narrower than my hallway, and I wouldn't like to try and take a wheelchair down it. It's good over towards Westcott, but quite a bit of it just is not what it says on the tin.
Yeah, no, thank you for bringing that up, actually, Ted, because that is sort of part of the project that we're working on at the moment. The how we communicate different routes that are signed, and how can we actually display through our website and communications and things on site, how people can make a decision to whether they think it's okay that they can do the route or not, like what Ash was saying. And I do agree with the Leith Hill Greenway. It's such a patchwork of habitat. It's beautiful, but as you say, some of it is brilliant in terms of how the terrain is, and some of it just absolutely isn't great either. So no, thank you for voicing that. It's a really good point.
Well, there's a whole long section down at Denbies hillside, which is, you know, it's not a very steep gradient. It's relatively smooth. It's the sort of place I'd be happy to go with a pushchair in both directions, especially past the lovely artwork just at the bottom of Denbies hillside. You know, the one with the butterflies and the caterpillars and the plants which the caterpillars live on. If you travel on the train between Reigate or between Dorking and Guildford, you know exactly where to look. You can just about see the artwork.
Yeah, it's really lovely there. Yeah.
But if you want to contact me via Yasmin, I'll share with you I'm happy to share with you my thoughts on my experience walking on it just after it opened, because I went up there one weekend, I think it was in September, and walked along quite a long section of it. And I was right at the other end of it, volunteering at Leith Hill Tower about 3 weeks ago.
Yeah, brilliant. No, thank you, Ted. We probably will be taking you up on that offer, I think.
Yeah, thanks, Ted. We better carry on because Colette will need a break soon.
Yes, no, all good. So this bit is just a bit of fun. So we're doing Spot the Cow, but shortly after this, we're going to do something called a mindful moment. So there'll be a little bit of audio going on of the natural landscape. So it's mostly just wind through the trees and things like that as we look at the view. It's about 30-45 seconds long. So I'll just sort of allow us, we won't, Ali, Ash and Krista and I won't speak through this next bit. It will just be a few seconds of quiet. So this is just Spot the Cow. It's me zooming in terribly on an iPhone. So I think just before we reach this artwork, it's really lovely when you're out and about, no matter where you are. It's lovely just to take a few moments to just listen or see or touch what is around you without purpose. And I think that sometimes just in a mindful way connects you just to your surroundings. So that's what we like to do, even as a team, when we're out working. It just, yeah, grounds you somewhat. But I think we're approaching our second to last artwork now.
Yep, so this is called Breaking Ground by Robin Jacobs. And she was responding to the history of the Heath and how people used to come out and dig the turfs as cheap fuel for their fires. So she actually, it was almost like a performance piece where she took out squares of the turf, leaving them in this sort of patchwork so that it's still able to, the heather's still able to grow. And that's what they used to do, apparently, because it was it's another technique that keeps the heathland and doesn't allow it to grow into secondary woodland. So, and then with the pieces of turf that she took out, she just built these little sort of columns with. So I thought this was a really interesting piece. It's like a land work. Ted, I see your comment about the locations. What 3 words is a good idea? We haven't got that, but we have we have a map that shows where each one is numbered, and it shows where each one is on the trail, and it gives a little bit of information about each one. So it's always just pretty much the same circular route that they're all on. And the students' work is suitable for various locations within that route. So we just stick to that circular route because a lot of it you can't go on anyway because they want to protect the
of course. Yeah, I was wondering whether they're also marked on OpenStreetMap. You know, the map, which is rather like Wikipedia, that people can add locations to.
I've never heard of OpenStreetMap. I'm not sure that the Heathland would be on that because obviously it's a path across the landscape rather than a road.
No, OpenStreetMap covers all sorts of paths, including anywhere that you.
Oh, does it? I've not heard of that one.
Again, if you like to contact me through Yasmin, I'll give you all the details, including some examples of places that are marked up in way of artwork, and they also appear on Wheel Map, which is the map which shows places that you can get to.
Yeah.
If you need wheelchair or pushchair access.
Oh, great! That sounds good. Thank you. And then this is the last one. So this one is called Deep Sea by Steph Will, and she came out onto the heathland and took photos with an infrared thermal lens, and this was the imagery that she got, and it's really nice as you approach because they really pop out. She's had these printed on aluminium, so the color is really vibrant, really shines out against the background. And at the edge of each of these circles is a code which tells you exactly where she took the photograph on the heath. This one, and because this is the last one, actually, as we were saying, the beginning of the route is much firmer and flatter, so that actually at that T-junction, if you went left, you actually get to the end of the route because it's a circular route, so you would be able to see this one.
So just to say, everyone, it's like blues, reds and yellows and oranges on the thermal imaging, which looks quite good. You can see on these circles.
Nice.
Yeah, it's totally different colors as to what you would normally take, if you took a photo. So because it's showing the heat of those scenes. And we're back at the beginning.
Thanks very much. Has anyone got any questions before we go? Sylvia, did you have one?
Hi, yeah, sorry, can you hear me? I just
Yes.
wondered, you referred a couple of times to maps. How do you get a map of the route and how far is the circular walk, please?
So the map is all on the website, so surreyhillsarts.org, and you can just download it on there. But I can also, what I'll do is I'll just send that so that can be distributed to you also. You don't have to go digging around for it. If you were walking, it would take about an hour to do the full circular route. But you don't have to do the whole thing, like we said. I mean, once you've looked at the route, you can decide how much or how little you do. It's just a circle your route like that.
Does it work its way up and then down again?
Sorry, what was that?
Does it go uphill or do you go downhill?
Yeah, so so the initial artworks and the last ones are on the lower part, and then you would go up. So the wing structure was on the higher part, and all the ones after that until that last one.
Thank you. Luke, did you have a question?
No, I haven't.
Okay. Well, can I just say thank you very much? That was really interesting. The art was interesting as well. Some I preferred, it's all about personal taste, isn't it? And there were some I preferred more than others. I was quite surprised. The one with the mirrored guys on the tree, I thought, oh, that's not going to be very good. But then when you went close up and you could see the reflection of the view behind, and the fact that it was red was really good. So thank you very much for
Thank you.
Thank you for inviting us.
Yeah, it was lovely.
Thank you.
Yeah, fascinating.
And just to say, I've put in the weekly update about us going to visit some of the places to look at access. So if any of you are interested, please let me know.
This would really help us out. Like I say, we're just about to launch our 9th Inspiring Views, which is the permanent programme. And it would just be so good to get your feedback around the access for each of those. So I can send that link to you as well.
Yeah.
Because there's an interactive map of those across the Surrey Hills.
Yeah.
Thank you. And Ange, were you going to say something, Ange?
Just say you okay, I know what my husband like to.
And that's made it all worth it to hear that, to be honest.
Yeah.
So that's really good. Ted, just before we go.
Yeah, just so firstly, sorry I wasn't able to join you right at the beginning. I've had somebody looking to try and get our double glazing sorted out, so that's why I was away. What I've seen looks brilliant. I really must come over and have a look at it in Farnham. But do have a look at wheelmap.org and look at what's the information I put for Box Hill, because that will give you an idea of the sorts of things you can get. There's also a couple of artworks in the subways under the A24, which have got pictures on Wheelmap, which shows again how you can get access to them.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks everyone for coming, and catch up with you soon. Thanks to everyone from Surrey Hills.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for having us.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.